Welcome to Bulbshare Future Voices, your fortnightly fireside chats with industry experts, thought leaders, and pioneers exploring the future of consumer insight, brand marketing, AI, and technology. In today's episode, we're speaking to Thomas Snitker to discuss AI and synthetic data and how these two are shaping the future of insights. Thomas Snitker is the head of research at the iconic Lego brand. With a deep passion for user centricity, research, and user experience, Thomas leads the research network across Lego's business units, running over 150 international studies each year to uncover what kids and their families love. Previously, as CEO and founder of Snitker Group, he built a strong foundation in research and usability, which now fuels his work at Lego, combining in-person insights with AI-driven platforms. He's also an accomplished author with books like User Experience Research with Children and contributions to the Handbook of Global User Research. You're in for an incredible treat in this episode, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this one with Bulbshare Future Voices. Please welcome to our podcast, Thomas Snitker. Thomas, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
Amazing. First off, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. So it's late August is where the season really changes here in Denmark. And we start putting on our sweaters again. And for Lego, it's also a crucial time of year because we're ramping up for our big moment is a lot of the gift giving that happens around the holiday time, the Christmas gifts and all that. So yeah, it's a busy time.
Amazing. And I mean, look, as someone who's also quite keen on getting like a Lego product, I know for myself, I love the Lego flowers. I've quite enjoyed that shift in seeing Lego also start catering to millennials, someone like me who actually is finding quite creative inspiration from the Lego flowers. So as someone who's a fan of the brand and doing that, please keep those coming. I love those so much.
It is fun with the brand because it's just a toy, a construction toy, but the combination can be endless. It's just up to your creativity, how you express yourself. So that means it's great for young kids, older. And you can build replicas of things that are huge and that maybe you like cars or maybe you like some buildings or maybe you're a fan of something. You can build it in Lego and specifically with the flowers, they last longer than the real flowers and they don't need water.
Exactly. That's the first thing I thought. I was like, I don't need to have buy this next week and the week after and the week after. I don't have to put this in the sun. I can just put it in a beautiful vase and it becomes a work of art instead of work to keep it alive. So amazing. So talking about today's topic, which is really centered around AI and synthetic data. I think AI is quite a hot topic of conversation these days. And we're aware that AI and synthetic data as a whole is shaping the future of insights. So my first question to you is, what are some of the practical implications of using AI and synthetic data in market research?
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm in my late 50s. I was around when the internet was turned into a commercial entity and World Wide Web. And then we had the .com bubble and we thought the world had changed. What a revolution that was. But now with AI, you can just see it's just a similar tectonic shift. We can't even see maybe the proportions yet of how huge this is. So it's a gift to be part of that transformation. So for a researcher in a company like Lego, it's very daunting because what can we do? What are we allowed to do? What should we do? So on one aspect is the governance and respecting the brand and what people expect in terms of safety and in terms of copyrights and a lot of things that Lego has. And on the other hand, expressing creativity using AI also, in our research setup. So it has enormous potential. For instance, we can, with AI, reach hard to get to audiences and we can also simulate situations, contexts, conversations at a much higher level of confidentiality and confidence at the same time.
Mm.
So it goes hand in hand with so many business needs that we have that has been really costly and timely to do in the past. And in some cases, for those reasons, they have not been done. People have thought it would be fantastic to get the voice of the customer into our process at this point, but it's just we can't wait 6 months or 8 months. But now we have a turnaround time that sometimes is simply minutes. We can run a
Mm.
study, set it up in minutes. It's like crazy. Obviously, still, we need to teach the AI. We need to teach ourselves what can we rely on, and how can we trust it. And there's also another challenge that I think maybe we'll talk about that later. But a challenge is bringing our colleagues and our whole organization on to the AI changes, because there are some
Mm.
skepticism. There's a lot of people who are like, hmm, can we trust it? Is it hallucinating? Will it take our jobs? And there are some myths that. So if we come and say, oh yeah, we run all these AI studies, and with synthetic data, they will say, no way, we will not listen to you. So we
Yeah.
need to bring them on board, and at the same time also educate ourselves on what can be done and should be done. So promising times.
Mm. Amazing. I absolutely agree with you on how quickly we've been able to do things now that AI is here to stay. As someone who's working in the marketing department, the fact that I can do something as simple as create a whole new image just by adding a prompt in less than 2 minutes or like even 2 seconds versus having to source an image online or have to take a photo myself. I agree with you. Like the speed in which we're able to achieve things these days, thanks to AI, is incredible. Scary sometimes because I think, oh my word, like, will it take some people's jobs or not? But I don't think it needs to be looked at a scary lens like that. It really can be quite beneficial. And it's amazing to hear that even for you at Lego, studies are being able to be just brought out really quickly thanks to AI. And I guess my next question to you, Thomas, is, how do you see AI and synthetic data improving the way that researchers work, more on a day-to-day basis in the coming years?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm sure we'll figure more out as we experiment and learn about it. But I can give you one example. So many Lego products that will come out like in 2 or 3 years are being worked on now by our designers and our stakeholders. Usually they come up with great ideas and design variations, and they want to test it. They want to test it with kids or families or people who are into flowers or whatever it is. But we've seen in the past sometimes that people who are actually well suited to be respondents in studies like that are also sometimes so dedicated they might sometimes take pictures of it, even though we've told them this is actually confidential. They take pictures of it and share it, and sometimes unfortunate places where our business secrets, our design secrets get spilled on the internet, and other fans pick them up, or maybe our competitors pick them up, and so we're quite sensitive to confidentiality. And that's one place where synthetic data can really cross, or we can save a lot of time, and we can reduce a lot of risk by building these synthetic data pools, running studies with synthetic personas, maybe could be kids, synthetic sub-segments of our audience, and then get feedback from synthetic data as part of the process to get feedback from real people. So I wouldn't say it's not an either or. It's just a supplement that can cut some corners and cut some time, and actually lead to more user involvement that way. We can simply get more feedback than we could without synthetic data. So confidentiality issues and sort of the leak problems is one way where synthetic data. And another one is experimenting more. Because if if a study in the old world cost X amount of dollars and took X amount of time, you can now say save so much on that side. So that means it's actually more up to the researchers' imagination, and how can we challenge a given design? How can we expose it to maybe new types of audiences, maybe in different contexts? So instead of just showing people what we maybe did in the old world, where we invited them into an office, we showed them the product, here's the office. I mean, why would you ever use this product in an office? No, but that's just where we work. Yeah, but and that's convenient for us, but it has nothing to do with the actual where you build your flowers, maybe. But now with synthetic data and remote platforms, we can have our audiences be wherever they like. Where would you build those flowers? Where would you purchase them? Who would you purchase them with? We could maybe follow along on your journey there and understand what your concerns might be, or also what tickles you about it. What can we improve? So in that way, we can experiment much more and come up with finer nuances, a richer image of the real world, even though it sounds crazy, we're using a synthetic world. But that synthetic world is, it's based on the real world. So you could say it's not that far off. But yeah, I think those are the so cutting costs, reducing risks in many ways, and crucially to a company like Lego, it is reducing the time it takes to develop the products. If you just knew how much time and effort goes into one single product, you might be surprised, because it really does take 2 to 3 years for a single product to go through the entire process until the point of purchase. Because there's so many things to consider. Usually a product is a part of a larger a series. Maybe the flowers is a good example. We have bigger and smaller. We have some, well, all kinds. But for the company, we need to consider, what would the consumer like? Would they like a large box that is expensive but beautiful but also takes a long time to build, or would they like a smaller one, or would they like something in between? And so what we usually do is have a range where some are smaller, some are mid-size, and some are larger. But how many should we have, and what should be in it? Should the theme for the large box be a cactus, or should the theme for the small box be a cactus and the large box be a tulip? It sounds maybe mundane, but those make it or break it for the consumer, if they understand what they're buying into. And it's important for us to understand, actually what makes them tick, what is engaging, and how can our products play a role for them.
Amazing. I mean, yeah, I actually never thought to look at it from that lens, because for me, flowers, if we go back to the flowers example, I'm someone who would prefer it takes a little bit longer, because I let my creativity flow, and the more time you give me to be creative, the more I really appreciate the end product. So I always gravitate to the flowers that will take me a lot longer to complete, versus I think there were some of these like F1 cars. I know a friend who has like a McLaren Lego, and same concept, takes really, really long, but because it's so very direct, like it's going to be a car at the end of the day, so it's very 1 + 1. Whereas for me, I feel like, but where's the creativity in that? Whereas the flowers, for me, I find more creative. I never thought to think like, actually, hold on, same like length of time to create these two products, but my approach is quite different for the F1 Lego car versus the flowers. And I guess, yeah, wow. You've just made like a really interesting point there. And I think you touched on how, yes, there is that aspect around confidentiality, which it's sensitive information, but maybe more on like a lighthearted, or at least more on a positive side. With your experience as a research manager, could you perhaps maybe share a light bulb moment where you found that AI actually significantly impacted your approach to a particular research project, or just research in general at Lego?
Yeah, there's actually been quite a lot of them, where you sit in a meeting and you get a brief, or I get a brief, our team gets briefed that we'd like to understand something, and then the team might say, we really need to get to the depth of this. We need to understand maybe a play pattern or a play context. How do kids, for instance, engage with ninjas and manga and the whole that theme? That could be a good example. So they say, what can we learn about how ninjas and for instance, we have in Lego a series called Ninjago. I don't know if you're familiar with them. It's
Yeah,
around
yeah.
about sort of this I guess Proto-Asian storytelling about there may be a master. It's about mastery and learning, being a good student, being and kids really resonate with that. But why and how? And to which extent? And are there certain kinds of kids who are more into this? So we would usually come up with a study where we go and interview enough children, like enough being sometimes one. If it's by tomorrow, they need the answers. Sometimes 100. If they can wait a week or two, sometimes 1,000. If it's really a big business decision. But with synthetic data and with AI, the Lightbulb moment is that, all right, yeah, well, we can just get started now. And by the end of the day, we will have progressed so much further. And that elevates our role as researchers in a design team, because then we can suddenly be a partner at a much more sort of not even day-to-day basis, but on an hour-to-hour basis, where the designers can adjust or improve their ideas, or maybe they can go what you would call maybe crazy tangent. Let's go over here. How do we make how could Ninjago be like Naruto or Pokemon or some of those big stories? Or what if Ninjago happened in the future? Or crazy ideas like that would probably not have any business relevance, but could spark new innovation, give the designers new ideas. So synthetic data can cut some of that time and make the audiences come more alive, and thus make much richer products, essentially.
Amazing, amazing. And I guess my next question to you then, just following that, is, how do you ensure that there's this human element and storytelling that remains central when working with AI generated data, right? Like you said, synthetic data, it's not really based, or it's not very real compared to if you were to just ask a human being. If you asked me which tulip or which Lego flowers I like, I'll say the tulips. I love those. They look visual. Whereas synthetic data, it might tell you something else. But I guess the question here is, how do you ensure that you have that human element and storytelling, and it remains central even though you're working with AI generated data?
Yeah, and this is so crucial, because my designers or my stakeholders, they don't care if it's synthetic data or if it's real data, if they can empathize with it, if I can provide sort of a compelling, engaging story around it. And I cannot create a story that says, on average, kids are 6.8 years old and they have 1.3 siblings, because nobody is that. It
No.
has to be a real person that they can empathize with. So our job is to find patterns in the data that we have, that clusters that sort of lend themselves to here. One archetype or one persona could be kids who play frequently with other kids. Here's another persona, someone who's kind of into ninjas, but also into a whole other lot of things. And so those two personas already there, you can see what sort of stories would they be into, and how can you build your products to support those kind of games. So yeah, emphasizing making stories come alive. None of my stakeholders want averages. They want individuals that can help them understand, how can they make the product better. And sometimes it's also for the designers to take away features and say, in the olden days, we might have a super feature-rich product, very expensive, takes a long time to build, and it it's a compromise of all the different needs that all the different personas have. Instead of saying, no, we need a product that's totally geared to maybe somebody like you who like to get in the zone when you build, whereas others, they don't really care about the building experience. They want it afterwards. They were looking for the moment when it's done and they can display it, or for the kids to play with it. So those are two different intentions or user needs. One is display, built for display, and one is built for just building. And then once they're done with it, they don't care about it really. Or, there are all kinds of middle grounds, but you get what I mean. So that is one way to tell stories, make the stakeholders understand and empathize that they don't care about data. They care about, things that they feel. And funny thing about that is also they remember them better. They remember personas or stories that are sort of individualized, that are rich, much better than averages. They don't relate as easily to that. So that's a good thing for us.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I mean, so far this conversation has been so insightful, at least for me. Like, as someone who is just a genuine fan of the brand, and just hearing like what goes behind the scenes with Lego, without like spilling like too many beans, but also just knowing and feeling like absolutely like there's this thought, right? And I had no idea that certain products can take long, like years to create, but it's always, seeing the end result. And I know back home, I grew up with like Legos, and I always have the image in my mind that I still see today. Parents have to pick up after kids play with Lego, and they might find one and they step on it, and it's like an hour moment, but like for the kid, it's just like, I don't know what it is about that image for me that just hits like such enjoyment, that still as an adult today, I go back to Lego and I'm like, I might not be stepping on any more Lego pieces, but I still have that like story of growing up with Legos, and here I am like buying like Lego flowers, and like you said, I enjoy the process of creating something beautiful. And yes, I can display, but the process for me is why I personally love your Lego flowers. So thank you again for such incredible insights, and I hope our audience has been loving the conversation. Do make sure that you subscribe and like and follow our podcast for more. It's our final question for today. Gosh, I would have gone on forever and ever and ever, but I know I can't. So I guess with the last final question I have for you, Thomas, is just looking ahead and shining a light on your future voice as a thought leader within the space of being a researcher. What are your tangible and actionable tips that you have for effectively integrating AI into market research to balance both that quantitative accuracy, but with that qualitative depth?
Yeah, excellent question. And obviously that's very high on my agenda. There's a lot of things. So one is governance and ethics around AI. And, we're a toy company. Children are our role models, but also our audiences and families. So really making sure that AI is contained in a good way, and that it's within, the expectations of the brand and what the audience is. So that's one thing. We can't let down the brand. We can't let the kids down. So that's very important. Another one is the organization in itself. As we talked about a little earlier, take small incremental steps rather than saying, here's a new tool, we're just doing this, just follow it, fall in line. That wouldn't be very Danish either. But so there's a lot of consensus that we're trying to build. Be super transparent on what is AI and what is not. So one thing that can demonstrate that is to run a study in the more conventional way, and run a study using AI, and then show everyone where it overlaps, where the differences, and open it up for discussion. Because you could argue that in some ways conventional research has a lot of shortcomings as well, just as AI has. So each of them, maybe we should talk about both and not just the skeptics about AI. And another parallel to sort of other we talked about the .com boom and how the internet changed things, and now how AI will change things. There will be a maturing period where we need to set aside time to fail. We need to experiment and throw things at the wall, as they say, and also accept, that we don't get it right the first or the second or maybe the 100th time. So not expect that it'll just be up and running and then it'll change everything in no time. So yeah, have a certain flexibility in your timelines, and incrementally experiment, be translucent or something like that, so transparent, so everyone can see what you're doing, so they don't say, we did this, they run AI tests and it's we don't understand it, and no, we'll just don't do it, because then suddenly research has no role. And you could ultimately, sort of on a more philosophical level, ask what is the purpose of research? I mean, designers are designers, they can make great products, why do they need us? So where is it we add value? And I think with AI and synthetic data, we are able to actually lift the level of impact and purpose to be more strategic, more business relevant, simply because we can do more. But obviously it requires researchers to keep being rigid, and researchers to ask good questions, and be methodological. And so you can implement a lot of AI and it can go great, but it can also go really bad. It depends on the quality of the people who implement it. So I think that'll be my tips.
Amazing. No, amazing. And I think amazing tips that absolutely, I know that any researcher listening to this episode will absolutely take with them. I think AI, it's not this big scary thing. It is, just being mindful, being ethical about how we use it. And I think from this conversation, I just want to say, thank you so much for sharing your know-how. Thank you for your insights. I look forward to seeing more Lego flowers, more F1 cars, and hopefully one day, 10 years from now, when I have a little one, she'll be playing, or he'll be playing with a little Lego toy. So
yeah,
don't hold me to it. Maybe not 10 years, maybe give me 20. But Thomas, no, thank you so much. And I look forward to just catching up with you again. But for now, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did.
Very much. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Bulbshare Future Voices. We hope you enjoyed the insights and fresh perspectives shared by our guest. Now, if you're ready to dive deeper into the world of consumer insights and co-creation, head over to bulbshare.com to learn more about how we're helping brands connect with real voices from across the globe.